Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Gordon Stables, the director of the Schools of Journalism and Communication at the University of Southern California's Annenberg School for Communication and Journalism, and I could not be more honored to be here today. At USC Annenberg, we think every day about what journalism means for a healthy democracy. Our students arrive with a powerful belief that journalism retains the core ability to inform, engage, and hold powerful institutions accountable, whether it's the story our students did this week on unsanitary conditions in the dining hall, which got national attention, or whether it's the long-form work that they did 5 years ago on building an investigative unit to hold our own institution accountable for our own shortcomings. But influential work of the journalism that's done today is why we're here to honor. And I look around this room and I think about the work that our students will be engaging and reading quite literally. We use the award submissions in class materials, is the work that we honor and recognize today because it meets the highest standards of rigorous reporting and analysis. These Cronkite Awards have been presented biannually since 2001. They were created to spotlight journalism that strengthens the public sphere and to ensure that future journalists have models worthy of the tradition that Walter Cronkite himself embodied, models of curiosity, clarity, independence, trustworthiness, and courage. And so it's now my real pleasure to introduce the person who brainchilded these awards more than 2 decades ago. Marty's the founding director of the Norman Lear Center. He's a professor at USC Annenberg, and if you have the chance to go through his resume, you'll notice that he's been a journalist, speechwriter, screenwriter, studio executive, media scholar, and I think everyone's favorite fun fact, he was also the president of the Harvard Lampoon. His work across those different areas has had one common thread: how storytelling, politics, and public life shape one another, and the recognition of the great work that you all have done is the latest instantiation of that work. So please join me in welcoming my colleague and friend, your host for the day, Marty Kaplan.
If this isn't a defining moment for American journalism and American democracy, I don't know what is. The work we honor today could not matter more. We're here to celebrate Cronkite's legacy, to be sure, but also to inherit it, to live up to it, to affirm the debt we owe and the duty we share to freedom of the press. That freedom is protected by the First Amendment. But a free press is more than a shield. It's a power, the power to defend democracy, to critique democracy too, and there's plenty to critique. The failure of our checks and balances to check and balance was predicted by Madison's warnings about factional loyalty and Washington's warning that partisan conflict would lead to what he called a spirit of revenge. Their fears led the founders to separate power broadly, dividing it not only among 3 branches of government and levels of government, but also vesting it in a 4th estate. A free press is the instrument they secured to expose lies, reveal corruption, resist bullying, and hold rulers accountable to the ruled. In his memoir, A Reporter's Life, Cronkite hung a lantern on it. A free, unintimidated, and unregulated press, he wrote, is democracy's early warning system against both the dangers of democracy's own excess and the approach of tyranny. And inevitably, he went on, one of the first signs of tyranny's approach is its heavy footstep on the threshold of press freedom. That's why the battle cry of self-styled strongmen is your fake news. Discrediting journalism doesn't just put a profession in the crosshairs. It's an assault on the entire operating system of a free society. Muzzle the messenger, and every truth-based institution becomes collateral damage. If extra-legal executive orders can erase facts and nullify laws, a rigged insurrection can nullify the lawful transfer of power. If dissent can be rebranded as sedition, delusion can masquerade as reality. If evidence can be smeared as politics, scientists can be tarred as charlatans and medicine maligned as quackery. If reporters can be demonized as liars, judges can be framed as partisans. History can be scrubbed of its instructive darkness, and universities are hostages to the culture wars. If the Billionaires' Boys Club can bulldoze a news network, tyranny's footstep is a thumb on the gilded scale. Truth is not the enemy of the people. The antidote to fake news is real journalism. The antidote to "I alone can fix it" is a free press. A free press is the watchdog that barks when the threat to justice is the Department of Justice. A free press is the news story that refutes disinformation instead of platforming it. It is the reporter who calls gibberish what it is instead of sane-washing it. The producer who defies censorship instead of appeasing it. The social network that upholds guardrails instead of politicizing them. The legacy broadcaster that resists extortion instead of obeying in advance. The correspondent who stands her ground despite misogynistic slurs. Journalism is a guardian of our republic, a sentry that keeps us from sleepwalking into autocracy. Journalism does this not by taking sides, but by valuing truth over loyalty and evidence over ideology. There is nothing partisan about that beat. Majorities of Republicans, Democrats, and independents agree that our system of self-government is struggling or under serious threat. Broad bipartisan majorities say a free press is essential to keeping that system healthy and keeping the public informed rather than misled. Democracy's early warning system, as Cronkite called it, is not red or blue. It is red, white, and blue. It does not take political sides, it takes democracy's side. That's the theory. You're the practice. Your work models how a free press defends democracy. What does that look like? Look around your table. Look around the room. It looks like journalists at KFOR TV in Oklahoma City. Exposing a bungled ICE raid on an American family's home and pressing Homeland Security to own its cover-up. It looks like KSL TV5 in Salt Lake City. Strengthening public trust by holding Utah politicians accountable with rigorous fact-checking. It looks like Julia Vaquero and Noticias Telemundo. Connecting politics to citizens' lives by empowering its audience to give public voice to their disquiet. It looks like Navaz and Jeff Bennett at PBS NewsHour. Defending the public sphere by respecting the public for paying attention to actual news. It looks like John Dickerson on CBS News Plus. Calling out false narratives with moral clarity and reclaiming memory from gaslighting. It looks like Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes. Standing firm for due process despite corporate and political pushback. It looks like Peter Alexander on NBC News. Challenging White House falsehoods in real time and modeling courage and composure in the line of fire. It looks like Jon Stewart on Comedy Central's Daily Show. Deploying satire grounded in facts to avert us from normalizing the absurd. It looks like the Rachel Maddow Show on MS Now. Using the tools of television journalism to help a pro-democracy movement recognize itself as a movement. These are your colleagues, your fellow citizens, Americans using the First Amendment to protect the Constitution that enshrines it. What you've just applauded are teasers for the work done by today's honorees. So to kick off the awards, please join me in a round of applause for all of them and all of you for the truth and courage and patriotism of this community and for the freedom of the press that makes this defining moment possible. That's the sound of democracy's early warning system. A quick word to our speakers about today's program. You are seasoned pros, you know live TV, you hit your marks, you also know Maya Angelou's advice. People will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how long you took to say it. She didn't quite say that, but you get the idea. With that in mind, it's my pleasure to welcome an Emmy, DuPont Columbia, and Peabody award-winning journalist, a professor emerita at USC Annenberg, and Cronkite Awards judge, my colleague and friend, Judy Muller.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's great to be here, or in the words of Norman Lear, it's great to be anywhere, really. But what's really great is seeing so many of my former students here today. I didn't expect to see them. They have jobs. Anyway, the first Cronkite Awards in 2001 were given for work that aired on local TV stations. Today, even in a world of TikTok and YouTube, local TV news remains the most popular news source for Americans. It's where many of us here today got our starts, not at the networks, but in newsrooms across the country. For me, it was a small station in New Jersey, a really small station. For Peter, it was Lexington, Spokane, and Seattle. For Scott, it was Lubbock and Dallas-Fort Worth. For Jeff, a New York cable station. For Julio, an affiliate in LA. Today, we honor 2 local TV stations for outstanding political journalism. The first is for KFOR-TV in Oklahoma City, an NBC affiliate owned by Nexstar. Judges commended KFOR reporter Spencer Humphrey and photojournalist Isaac Korstjens for their stunning three-part series about a U.S. citizen and her daughters detained and humiliated by Homeland Security agents in Oklahoma City. Their reporting forced ICE to admit to wrongdoing, now extinct outcome, I would say. The series aired before the current wave of ICE raids, proved to be an early warning of their proliferation. Judges called it, quote, a poignant example of finding an important local story that illustrates a national one and digging deep into it and not letting go. Let's have a look.
It's safe to say it caught the nation's attention.
The story from Oklahoma, a woman and her daughters, ICE came into the house.
From members of Congress.
And according to the local affiliate, KFOR, they had a search warrant for the home, but the suspects listed on the warrant were no longer living in the home.
And they repeatedly said, we are citizens. You have the wrong people.
To the pundits.
These are U.S. citizens.
So many people had thoughts about the story of a woman we called Marissa and her 3 daughters who had just moved to Oklahoma City from Maryland, living in this rented home for less than 2 weeks when agents with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security burst inside, forcing them out at gunpoint, taking their phones and money before leaving. All of it we told you, authorized by this search warrant signed the day before on April 23rd by a federal judge. The warrant was for the property, but it did list 8 different people as its targets. They put out this press release claiming to set the record straight on what happened. It included what we've always shared, that the raid was based on a lawful court order from a judge. But it also shared reports from some media outlets claiming one of those 8 human smuggling suspects named in the warrant, a woman named Sadia Lima Lopez, actually still owned the house at the time of the raid on April 24th. DHS cited those reports as fact in that news release, but we found it just isn't true. We found Lima Lopez sold the house weeks before the raid. You can look on Zillow and see it was listed for sale back on March 18th. And you can look through Oklahoma County records, where you can find this deed confirming the sale was signed, stamped, and notarized on April 14th. That's 9 days before the judge signed off on that warrant.
For proving how powerful local journalism can be, igniting national and international scrutiny, and holding power to account, a 2025 Cronkite Award for Excellence in Political Journalism goes to Spencer Humphrey of KFOR TV in Oklahoma City with photojournalist Isaac Korstjens, too. Please come up.
Well, this is quite the experience for us. I would like to start off by thanking the entire team of professionals who volunteered their time and their energy to review our work and for deciding that it would be worthy of receiving such an honor. We work in a mid-sized television market, Oklahoma City, but our news team at KFOR punches above our weight. Our journalists have produced work receiving 4 National Emmy Awards, a National Murrow, a DuPont, a Peabody nomination, and now this. Our newsroom was nationally recognized for its work on a horrific day in 1995 when an American terrorist bombed a federal building just a few miles from our station. That act was fueled in large part by misinformation. Our journalists have also been honored for a 20-year-long investigation that ended with an innocent man being released from prison after spending 48 years behind bars. That man in Oklahoma is the longest-serving exoneree in America. Relentless journalism secured his freedom. People know they can turn to our profession for help. It's exactly why that woman who we called Marissa reached out to our newsroom back in April, telling us she'd endured a nightmare. On a cold morning before sunrise, federal agents kicked in the door at Marissa's rental home. She and her daughters had just moved from Maryland to Oklahoma. They hadn't even unpacked yet, but there they were, facing federal agents forcing them outside into the rain before they could even get their clothes on. As Marissa and her children watched from the lawn, the agents ransacked their home and took all their money, electronics, and documents. And again, it's important to point out, they are U.S. citizens. They left her with only a copy of a search warrant with 8 suspects listed, none of whom Marissa had ever met or even heard of. We're used to hearing stories like this now, but back in April, something like this was still shocking. When we first reported this story, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security would not explain why they had treated Marissa and her children like criminals. Once that story aired, though, it caught the attention of a national audience, including some folks who are in this audience. Congress members held hearings. Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem faced intense questioning about what happened in Oklahoma City. Amid mounting national pressure, the Department of Homeland Security suddenly went after our reporting. Something new for me, the official DHS Twitter account replied to when I tweeted out the story with just the word wrong, followed by a statement claiming the current owner of Marissa's rental home was a suspected human smuggler. Some news outlets, as you saw in Oklahoma, actually ran reports amplifying DHS's statement as fact without questioning it. One of them even titled their article, "Get the Facts," which DHS then amplified across its own platforms in another attempt to discredit our reporting. However, DHS's statement, as you saw, was demonstrably false, and we proved it. We pulled state and federal records, even documents from the county assessor's office. Bottom line, the person DHS claimed owned the home had actually sold that house long before DHS convinced the judge to give them that warrant, long before Marissa and her daughters even stepped foot in Oklahoma. When we asked DHS if they had checked assessor's records to confirm the home's ownership, they didn't answer us. But because of our reporting, they did face public scrutiny, and suddenly people from around the world, I'm not kidding, came out of the woodwork to reach out to ask how they can help Marissa and her daughters. Our reports would not have made it to air, though, without a team effort in our newsroom, from the assignment editor, Steve Johnson, who took Marissa's phone call and immediately understood the urgency of the matter, to managing editor Ryan Baker, who helped with research and gathering documents, to news director Natalie Hughes, who helped with editing and fact-checking, and general manager Wes Milburn, who at any time, in the midst of really intense pressure from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, could have just told us to move on to something else. He didn't. In a business environment where newsrooms like ours no longer have the luxury of dedicated investigative reporters and special projects teams, all of these people went above and beyond the duties listed in their job descriptions. That especially includes photojournalist Isaac Korstjens, who put each of these reports together start to finish in an 8-hour daily news shift each time. I cannot reiterate enough how impossible that would have been without Isaac, who not only is a whiz at editing on the fly, but is gifted with the creativity it takes to tell an important story like this one. I hope our team effort can be a reminder as the local news business continues to face cutbacks, consolidation, and resource reductions. We cannot give up on our principles, our unwavering commitment to facts, truth, and public service. The stakes are simply too high, resources too thin for newsrooms to view each other as competition instead of counterparts. We should work as teammates to expose misinformation for exactly what it is, a direct threat to democracy. Thank you.
I always get a little emotional with these awards, but I'm telling you, that really moves me. By the way, you can see KFOR's entry and as well as the work of all of today's winners by using the QR code on this card that's at your table. So if you want to see more, there it is. Each year that these awards are presented, we partner with factcheck.org at the University of Pennsylvania's Annenberg Public Policy Center to honor the winners of their biennial prize for fact-checking. This year, a local station gets the trophy. To present it, please welcome the director of factcheck.org, Lori Robertson. There she is.
Thank you. The Brooks Jackson Prize for Fact-Checking is named for the veteran journalist who co-founded factcheck.org with the director of the Annenberg Public Policy Center, Kathleen Hall Jamieson. And Brooks Jackson himself is with us here today. KSL TV5 in Salt Lake City, an NBC affiliate owned by Bonneville International, wins this year's Brooks Jackson Prize for its Truth Test. This series provides Utah citizens with regular mini investigations of political claims made during statewide campaigns. Judges called the series clear, informative, even-handed, and well-researched. Here's how Truth Test investigative reporter Daniela Rivera scored a claim by Utah's governor that migrants at Mexican border crossings were smuggling drugs bound for Salt Lake City.
You can literally walk through, downtown Salt Lake City and see the impacts of those drugs that are coming across the border with Mexico.
Utah Governor Spencer Cox's comments about drugs in Salt Lake City came after he joined a group of other Republican governors at the U.S.-Mexico border on Sunday.
That's another, again, public safety reason that we need to do more to protect our borders. And then again, fix legal immigration so that people can come through the front door the right way.
Salt Lake City Mayor Aaron Mendenhall says there's no evidence that an increase in migrants crossing the southern border is influencing drug crimes in the city.
Our data doesn't show any increase related to immigration changes at the border.
That data from Salt Lake City Police shows a 4% decrease in drug cases from 2019 to 2022. To get some context, the KSL investigators sat down with Dustin Gillespie, the Drug Enforcement Administration Assistant Special Agent in charge here in Utah.
Where are the drugs in Salt Lake City, Utah coming from?
The drugs in Salt Lake City, just like the drugs across the state of Utah, are coming from Mexico.
And he says the DEA seized more fentanyl pills in the Rocky Mountain region than ever before in 2023. More than 664,000 of those pills in Utah. So the governor was right about where the drugs are coming from and an increase. But as for any tie to a surge in migrants seeking asylum, Gillespie says cartels roll the vast majority of those drugs right through legal ports of entry.
They can put more drugs into a vehicle and get it quickly across the border than somebody can hand carry across the border walking.
And he says that's been the case for the 17 years he's worked for the DEA.
They pack as much as they can into passenger vehicles and tractor trailers and get it across the border.
For showing how rigorous, locally grounded verification can strengthen public trust and democratic accountability, the 2025 Brooks Jackson Prize for Fact-Checking goes to KSL TV5's Truth Test, accepted by Daniela Rivera.
I'm going to be brief. I timed this. It was a sharp 1:30. That's what I tell producers. Thank you so much. Thank you to factcheck.org. This is so meaningful to us. It's truly an honor to just be in this room with all of these exceptional journalists who are here. It's incredibly meaningful that Brooks Jackson, the namesake of this award, is here. It was lovely to meet you, and thank you for the path that you've paved for our profession. This project was an ambitious undertaking for a local news station, so I have to say I'm so grateful for KSL TV leadership for believing in this work and giving us the green light to run with it, and then putting resources behind these reports over and over and over again in 2024. Truth Test was a team effort. It would not exist without the hard work of a whole bunch of people. That's our graphic artists, photojournalists, several reporters who jumped in to help, and investigative producer Annie Knox, who's also here tonight. Thank you for all your hard work. This project reflects your talent as well. When I pitched Truth Test for 2024, we knew it was going to be a pivotal election year. There would be a lot of noise and a lot of confusion. And so our goal with this project was simple. We wanted to help our community cut through the political back and forth and get to the truth, because the truth matters now and always. So thank you so much for this incredible honor and for recognizing the work behind Truth Test. And lastly, I just want to say my mom is also here, and thanks for everything, Mom.
Congratulations, Daniela. We thank Kathleen Hall Jameson as well for her center's generous underwriting of this event. And that reminds me, don't move my food. I'm coming back. Thank you. From here in, all the honorees, with the exception of a new award in comedic news and commentary, from now on in this award ceremony, these people are being recognized for outstanding journalism in national news analysis and commentary. Eligible coverage aired from Election Day to just after the end of the administration's first 100 days. Speaking of which, 100 days, our next winter is 100 Días de Trump, 100 Days of Trump, a primetime special on Noticias Telemundo. Judges said this Spanish language broadcast excels at documenting the massive changes carried out during this period, from immigration to tariffs. In it, anchor Julio Vaquero, with contributions by a team of correspondents and editorial producers, mixed reported segments with live discussions with lawmakers and with real-life examples of citizens affected by those executive orders. Let's have a look.
A lo largo de estos 3 meses, Noticias Telemundo ha encontrado latinos que desearían no haberle dado a Trump su voto.
Que yo era partidaria de él.
Esta cubana le dijo a Betsy Badel que ha perdido clientela por el miedo a las deportaciones.
El terror que ha sembrado este presidente en este país es el mismo terror que Fidel Castro sembró en Cuba.
Las repercusiones de sus políticas pesan aún más en quienes no votaron por él.
Que estaba en el TSA y en total me corrieron mi pasaporte y me dijeron, oye, no puedes irte.
Víctor nació aquí, pero la última vez que salió del país casi pierde su vuelo porque inmigración cuestionó la legitimidad de su pasaporte. Quienes están profundamente inmersos en el movimiento MAGA aseguran que la popularidad del presidente está más fuerte que nunca.
Yo no he visto ningún declive.
Este congresista republicano de Florida descarta como prematuras las críticas sobre la inestabilidad financiera por los nuevos aranceles.
Tenemos que tener paciencia. Obviamente el presidente Trump es sabe el arte del negocio y eso es lo que estamos viendo pasar día tras día.
Expertos prevén que las medidas de Trump aumenten la inflación, pero sus fieles seguidores confían que cumplirá su promesa de revitalizar la economía.
Pues sí, la economía es el tema central. Está con nosotros Lourdes Hurtado. Lourdes, a ver, escuchamos todas estas opiniones en tu reporte, pero en general, ¿qué dicen los latinos sobre el manejo de la economía en este gobierno de Trump?
Pues sabemos, Julio, que muchísimos de ellos votaron por él justamente por el tema de la economía. Puedo decirte, de hecho, que todos los votantes latinos que entrevisté durante estas campañas, que decían que iban a votar por Trump, no solamente aquí en Florida, también en Pensilvania, en Nevada, todos decían que era porque confiaban en que él manejaría mejor el tema de la economía que su contrincante. E incluso votantes que no estaban de acuerdo con cómo manejaría otros temas como la inmigración, le dieron por eso su voto de confianza. Y lo que hemos visto a lo largo de estos 100 días es que esa confianza se ha erosionado.
For storytelling that gives voice to communities too often spoken about rather than listened to, and for its vivid depiction of the human impact of government power, a 2025 Cronkite Award goes to Noticias Telemundo's 100 Days of Trump, anchored by Julio Vaquero. Come on up. Accepting for 100 Days of Trump, Julio Vaquero, and Telemundo, Senior Vice President for News and News Specials, Letitia Herrera. Come on.
Thank you very much. Well, this is a huge honor. It's an honor to accept this Walter Cronkite Award on behalf of Noticias Telemundo and the extraordinary team behind the Los 100 Días de Trump news special. Receiving an award named after the journalist who defined credibility is both humbling and really a reminder of the responsibility we carry. This is a recognition, however, not just for Noticias Telemundo, but also for our audience. The first 100 days of Trump presidency reshaped policy in ways that were immediate and deeply felt, especially by many of our viewers. For some, those first 3 months of the Trump presidency were a political story, largely told through the voices of policymakers. But we wanted to tell the story through the people who were affected by those policies. For our audiences, the changes in immigration policies are really the difference between families staying together or being forced to leave. The difference between living freely or living in fear. And it is critically important to hear those voices. That is why we do what we do. We report, we document what happens, we explain its impact, and then we put in the center of our reporting the people affected by those issues. On average, ICE has arrested, am I correct? ICE has been arresting over 1,000 people every day. 1,000 people every day, and most of them speak Spanish. Most of them don't have criminal record, and they just are hardworking people living in the United States. They depend on the information we give them in Spanish to understand what is happening. So we have visited Latino communities across the country, and we've talked to people like Ernesta Galvez. She works delivering food on her bike in the streets of New York. I met her in my reporting, and she was considered an essential worker back in the day during the pandemic, remember? Well, she's a Mexican immigrant, and she lives in the shadow. And she did tell me, however, with a smile, that she will do everything all over again because she doesn't want her 2 daughters to have the same life that she has had. She wants a different future for them. So yes, today immigrant communities are navigating complicated, often punishing realities, but they keep moving forward. And I believe that is the story that we should all continue to tell. So I want to thank every correspondent, every producer, every writer, every technician, photographer in Noticias Telemundo. This award really is testament that the work matters. And of course, I also want to congratulate all the other honorees today for their exceptional work. Thank you so much for this honor. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our next winner is PBS NewsHour's On Democracy, a series of probing interviews with experts, scholars, and activists across the ideological spectrum, conducted by the anchors of public television's marquee news broadcast, Amna Navaj and Jeff Bennett. Produced for the embattled and defunded network by its flagging Washington station, WETA, the program stepped away from the fire hose of distractions flooding the zone. Judges said the interviews cut through the doom scrolling and made you put down your phone and really listen. And it's true. Here's a look at excerpts from 2 of these conversations.
We should point out, Maria, that the majority of Americans say they don't even trust the media right now, that we've seen a decline in that trust over years, and many people like to see the president go after the press in the way that he does. They will hear this conversation and say, good, I'm glad he's doing what he's doing. What has the independent press ever done for me? What would you say to them?
The role of journalists in a country, in a democracy like the Philippines, like the United States, is to hold power to account. And I believe that that is why, you're not going to have an influencer or a content creator stand up to a dictator. You're not going to have someone have a set of of principles, of standards and ethics that actually pushes against their own self-interest. We're seeing all of these begin to fall, but here's the thing. Part of what triggered that is the technology, the public information ecosystem we live in. Journalists and news organizations have been under attack from the very beginning. So your lack of faith in that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. You lose journalism the way we practice it, you lose democracy.
There have been arguments, as you well know, that we are either in or that we're approaching a constitutional crisis. I'd imagine you would disagree with that. But what to you would signal a constitutional crisis? What to you would signal that this democratic experiment is in peril?
Well, it's interesting that you say democratic experiment, because when the executive branch, when the bureaucracy does not implement the directives of the political leadership that's responsible to the voters, that's a problem. I mean, a constitutional crisis is something like one branch going and doing things that are not within its authority, that courts are telling it to stopping to do, ignoring court orders. Trump has said he's not going to ignore court orders. He's going to appeal them, and he's taking it to the Supreme Court. And almost certainly, most of these things won't get to the Supreme Court. Certain things he might win on, certain things he might lose on, but that's the process. The American people are not buying this language that is simply an indication from the left that they don't like this restructuring of government, the new priorities, all of these certain things. Fair enough. That's a political argument to be had. But this is not any sort of a constitutional crisis.
Ilya Shapiro with the Manhattan Institute. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
We're assessing the state of democracy with depth, diversity, and respect for the audience's intelligence. A 2025 Cronkite Award goes to On Democracy on PBS NewsHour, anchored by Amna Navaj and Jeff Bennett. Please come up.
Thank you so much, Judy. Thank you to the award committee. Congratulations to our fellow nominees and awardees as well. Jeff and I will be brief, but I do want you to understand a little bit about how this came to be in the first place. Several months ago, a few of us basically locked ourselves in a conference room, which is how we get things done, as you know, in a newsroom, to try and solve a problem we've all been facing, certainly one we were facing, which was in this unrelenting flood of everyday news. How do we tackle the big things? How do we talk about democratic norms under threat, the rule of law being reinterpreted, press freedom under attack? How do we make sure that we don't miss the forest for the trees? So led by our executive producer, Sarah Just, with the support of our general manager, Mike Rancilio, and with an incredible team of producers who I will name here because you should hear all of their names: Emily Carpo, Murray Jacobson, Matt Loffman, Beth Summers, Michael Fritz, Courtney Norris, Kyle Medora, Sarah Clune-Hartman, all of whom who are here today. We created this series called On Democracy. And even as our federal funding was threatened, and then our federal funding was cut, we leaned in and we doubled down. We brought in multiple viewpoints, we did rigorous interviews, we had thoughtful conversations, always trying to abide by the view that Cronkite himself held, one we should all hold dear now, that journalism is what we need to make democracy work.
Indeed. And what we discovered in producing this series is that covering threats to democracy isn't a special project. It's not an occasional segment. It is the work. It is the heartbeat of what it means to be responsible journalists. Democracy, as we all know in this room, is not self-executing. It requires care, it requires vigilance, and a press willing to do the hard work in full view of the public. Because when institutions are strained, when facts are contested, when public servants are vilified simply for doing their jobs, the public looks to us as journalists for clarity, to slow the churn, to ask the hard questions, and to hold power to account with fairness and rigor. And this On Democracy series has given us the space to do exactly that, to step back from the daily deluge, to bring context to the chaos, and remind viewers that these debates are not abstract. So this award will fuel our work and keep us doing what we love to do. elevating facts over noise, substance over spectacle, and we will continue to show up for our viewers, for the truth, and for the democratic ideals that Walter Cronkite believed the press must safeguard. So our thanks to you, Marty, on behalf of the entire NewsHour team. Our thanks to the awards committee, to the Norman Lear Center, and to USC Annenberg. Thank you.
I hadn't seen Sarah just hiding back there. We go all the way back to Nightline with Ted Koppel, the old days. Our next honoree is CBS Evening News Plus anchor John Dickerson, recognized for his reporter's notebooks. Judges praised these exceptional essays carried by the streaming companion to the CBS Evening News for their historical grounding and humanizing detail, and I would add, masterful writing. Their topics range from the January 6th pardons and DEI to why Patrick Henry opposed the ratification of the US Constitution. They emphasize that his calm and rational account of how and why it matters that democratic values are under assault made his essays even more powerful and effective. Here's one of them.
3 years ago today, Russia invaded Ukraine. Here's what that looked like. When administration officials were asked about the anniversary, the picture got cloudier. The Secretary of Defense on Fox News.
Fair to say, Russia attacked unprovoked into Ukraine 3 years ago tomorrow.
Fair to say it's a very complicated situation.
The president's top negotiator, Steve Witkoff.
The war didn't need to happen. It was provoked. It doesn't necessarily mean it was provoked by the Russians.
A peace deal for Ukraine might require entertaining Putin's fictional history of how the war started, but there is a cost. Republican Senator Tom Tillis explained that cost after Trump claimed Ukraine started the war and called President Zelensky a dictator. There is no moral equivalency between Vladimir Putin and President Zelensky, the senator said. President Putin is evil, and he has to be stopped. When an American president labels the invaded country as the aggressor, it tells future invaders they might find an ally in the United States rather than an obstacle. If history is negotiable, its lessons no longer constrain a leader. Facts become inconveniences to be twisted as needed. Accountability? Gone. Just change the story. Those in power today who decide what we remember about yesterday can shape what we think about tomorrow. Which reminds us of January 6th. Assisting Putin's revisionism isn't the only new history. The administration is committed to rewriting the history of the months-long effort to overthrow 81 million votes in 2020. In the novel 1984, George Orwell wrote, "Who controls the past controls the future." It was a warning, not a set of instructions.
For clarifying the stakes of our moment in democracy with steady authority, and for reminding us that accuracy is still the sharpest tool in journalism, a 2025 Cronkite Award goes to John Dickerson's Reporter's Notebooks. John couldn't be here. He's on the air today, but he sent us this message.
Showing up matters. To me, that expression has always meant no matter how you feel, how little you can contribute, there is a value in honoring something you believe in by physically being there. So I am very sorry that I can't show up for you today. To take this award in my hands would be a great thrill, of course, but more to the point, I would like to show up for the Cronkite Committee and the USC Annenberg School, who have committed themselves to promoting the standards of our business. Critical thinking, rigor, curiosity, craft, what we believe makes for a better democracy and better citizens. That's what this award represents. It shows up for our profession when the pressures are to cut corners, to move faster than accuracy allows, to let the standards slip. Showing up by insisting that excellence matters, that the work deserves to be recognized, that the values of the craft are worth defending. So when I say that I am deeply honored by this recognition, it's not just the boilerplate. I have emergency feelings about that mission of sticking to what got us into the business in the first place and keeping the faith. And I'm thrilled to be in the company of the other winners whose work I admire as a competitor and as a citizen. The Cronkite name represents the gold standard, a journalist who showed up not just to report the news, but to demonstrate what the responsibility of delivering it demands. Thank you for affirming that these standards still matter and for the work you do to uphold them. It means everything. And while I didn't show up, Arturo Rhymes did. He was the executive producer of Evening News Plus, the broadcast where these essays aired. A vital requirement of this work we all believe in are colleagues who believe in it too, and who call you to be your best self in the service of this work. Arturo did that. If he hadn't asked, this work would not have existed. So, over to you, Arturo. Thank you for showing up in all the ways.
Thank you, Virtual John. Thank you to the Walter Cronkite Committee and the USC Annenberg community. It's an honor to be here as a humble representative of John and his work, and that is being recognized here today. You know, when I first asked John at the end of the show to do these essays, his first response was, wait, what? But then I explained to him that in this fast-moving, fast-paced news environment that we're in, I think we need a pause, and I think we can provide a credible compass to help the viewer understand the stakes of a story and not just the headline. And he was all in. So over the course of the 9 months of Evening News Plus's existence, John poured his heart, his knowledge, his journalistic credibility into these essays. He ached over them. Countless times he would say, Arturo, I got nothing. But he eventually would. He wanted to make sure the point was being made, not with a sharp sword, verbal sword, but with a delicate balance of history, of facts, and context, that it would cut through the political spin and the narrative of misrepresentation. Over the course of some 164 essays, he did that with little complaint. Often when we had to tell him, John, we need to cut 10 or 15 seconds out of your essay. But he did it. John tackled, as you saw, one example, a wide variety of topics, including the massive disruption of layoffs with DOJ, the chaos at the Justice Department, and even broader topics such as homelessness, inequality, and America's standing in the world. All of us in this room and in this profession are trying to do that, right? To hold what is true, to amplify what matters, to be committed to the mission of making sure that the American public has the vital information that they need in order to keep democracy intact. Especially in this moment in history when we are being tested by political pressure and, yes, corporate priorities. I think Evening News Plus did that. I know John and his essays did that. And while our show has ended, the fight continues. And after all, that is what the Walter Cronkite Award is about, keeping that fight alive. So thank you once again for this enormous honor, celebrating John and his work and the important role that he has played. It is a true validation to his efforts and the show's mission, and we could not be more proud of him and of this honor. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Our next national winner is Rule of Law, the 60 Minutes segment reported by Scott Pelley for his unyielding coverage of the abuse of presidential power. Judges called this story about executive orders targeting law firms as enemies an excellent and shocking look at the threat to our justice system. Though some law firms fought back, arguing in court that the orders were punitive and unconstitutional, 9 major firms rocked the legal community by going to the White House to strike a deal. It was nearly impossible for Pelly and producer Maria Gavrilovich to get anyone to agree to an on-camera interview. Even so, judges said their skillful examination stands up for the Fourth Estate's responsibility to not fold under pressure. The piece aired a week after 60 Minutes' longtime executive producer resigned amid increased corporate supervision of its news content, a pending FCC review of the CBS Skydance deal, and a $20 billion lawsuit by the president. Let's have a look.
It was nearly impossible to get anyone on camera for this story because of the fear now running through our system of justice. In recent weeks, President Trump has signed orders against several law firms, orders with the power to destroy them. That matters because lawsuits have been a check on the president's power. Many firms and attorneys have been targeted, among them Mark Elias, a longtime opponent of Trump, who is the only lawyer the president has named who was willing to appear on 60 Minutes. Elias and others are warning that Trump's assault on the legal profession threatens the rule of law itself. Are we reaching a point where a person will go to a law firm with a case that is opposed to the President of the United States, and the law firm will think, do we really want to take this case?
We're already there. They are deciding not to take on certain kinds of clients that might upset the administration, or not taking on certain kinds of causes that might put them in the crosshairs of the administration.
If lawyers give up their independence, what is lost?
The rule of law. And this is why the business community ought to care. Today, it might be that, Donald Trump thinks he can take over the election system through one of his executive orders. Tomorrow, maybe it's the banking system. After that, maybe it's contracts. Maybe he decrees, I'm going to decide which contracts are binding and which contracts aren't binding. So the legal system is fundamental to how our society operates, how capitalism operates, and everyone should have a stake in that.
For refusing to be intimidated by tyranny's heavy footstep, the 2025 Cronkite Award goes to Rule of Law on 60 Minutes. Accepting the award, 60 Minutes correspondent Scott Pelley.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. Marty, Walter was a friend of mine. And I can tell you from personal experience just how moved and honored Walter would be to have his name associated with USC Annenberg with this award, and also bestowed upon all of these tremendous colleagues here in this room today. So thank you. Thank you very much. And I also want to thank USC for educating the next generation. I had expected that at the end of my career, I would have everything pretty much taken care of. But apparently there's more work to do. So thank you. We need them. But we need them to be good. So thank you for educating the next generation. 2025 was a fraught time for 60 Minutes. As Marty mentioned, our corporation was attempting to merge with another company, and it required the Trump administration's approval to do so, and a great deal of pressure was placed on 60 Minutes. We lost two great news executives on either side of that story you just saw. As Marty mentioned, Bill Owens, the executive producer of 60 Minutes, under pressure was forced to resign. And then after that story aired, we lost our news division president, Wendy McMahon. These were not managers. These were leaders in our profession. The most outstanding leaders in journalism I have ever known in my career. And it was heartbreaking to all of us to lose them. However, I will say that in that season, last season, all of our stories got on the air. We got them all on the air. We got them all on the air with an absolute minimum of interference, nothing that anyone in this room would have been alarmed by. So our company is now the new Paramount, and we were all very concerned at 60 Minutes about what that meant. It's early yet, but what I can tell you is we are doing the same kinds of stories with the same kind of rigor, and we have experienced no corporate interference of any kind. So that has been a tremendous way to start this season. I want to thank Maria Gavrilovich, who is a producer who is completely undaunted by a story that no one will speak to us about and has no pictures of any kind to use. You've all been in that place. We are all experiencing trouble getting people to appear on our broadcasts because of the fear that has spread across the country. And yet, given that limitation, we are still on the air telling the public these stories, no matter how difficult it is for us to do the job in the way that we would like to do it. I also want to point out Alex Ortiz, who also worked on this story. He's here with us today. Alex is a brilliant associate producer at 60 Minutes. He's the kind of young person, I think you know what I mean, who gives you confidence and hope and faith in our future in this profession. You know, there was a time when things were worse. You have to go back a little ways. It was 1798. But that's when the Sedition Act was passed, and it was literally codified in law. It was against the law to criticize the federal government or any member of Congress. Editors and reporters went to jail in that period of time for doing their jobs. Fortunately, there was a sunset on that, and 2 years later in the Jefferson administration, it went away. But Madison was asked in 1800 what he thought of the Sedition Act, and he wrote in his letter from Virginia words that I think encapsulate this moment better than just about anything I can imagine. Madison wrote that freedom of the press is the right that guarantees all the others. And I am so honored to be in a room with my colleagues who are working so hard every day, taking risks every day to make sure that right endures. Thank you so very much.
Our next winner is NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander. For his entry, Holding the Powerful Accountable. Judges praised his live reporting and interviewing for meeting the challenge of fearlessly engaging with the president and his staff in the Oval Office and press room. They also lauded his skill at being both relentless and respectful, noting that while he doesn't editorialize, he also doesn't beat around the bush. In the face of being personally bullied and the risk of exile, judges said, he remains composed and unflappable, persevering and prepared with the facts. Let's watch that in action.
Mr. President, the Pentagon announced that it would be accepting a Qatari jet to be used as Air Force One.
What are you talking about? You know, what are you talking about? You know, you to get out of here. What does this have to do with the Qatari jet? They're giving the United States Air Force a jet, okay? And it's a great thing. We're talking about a lot of other things. It's NBC trying to get off the subject of what you just saw. You are a real, you know, you're a terrible reporter. Number one, you don't have what it takes to be a reporter. You're not smart enough. But for you to go into a subject about a jet that was given to the United States Air Force, which is a very nice thing, they also gave $5.1 trillion worth of investment in addition to the jet. Go back, you ought to go back to your studio at NBC, because Brian Roberts and the people that run that place, they ought to be investigated. They are so terrible the way you run that network, and you're a disgrace. No more questions from you. Go ahead. Go ahead, talk about that. His name is Peter something. He's a terrible reporter. Quiet. Let's go. He asks about a jet that was given. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. You know, you are so bad. You're such a bad reporter. I will say this, that if the news wasn't fake, like NBC, which is fake news, totally, one of the worst, ABC, NBC, CBS, horrible. But if they weren't fake news like this jerk that we have here, if we had real reporters, they'd be covering it. But the fake news in this country doesn't talk about that. This is a very serious situation. And if we had a real news or real press or media, we don't have that because they won't talk about this because they're all guys like that idiot. But if we had a real press, it would be exposed.
For demonstrating that holding power accountable is how journalism defends democracy, and for maintaining his dignity despite ad hominem attacks, the 2025 Cronkite Award goes to NBC News Chief White House Correspondent Peter Alexander.
To be fair, that was not the only clip in my submission, but I am incredibly honored to be here among this distinguished group of journalists. What an amazing group that we have gathered here, and so thank you for including me in that. The best advice that I ever received, the advice I share with aspiring journalists is just ask. The worst anyone can do is say no. It's the message my parents first shared with 9th grade me. I was thinking about reaching out to a list of reporters and anchors for a school project on what it takes to be a journalist. I was worried that they'd all say no, or they would laugh at this sort of eager young kid. But I took my parents' advice, and those journalists all said yes. It set me on the course that brought me to where we are today. Those early memories, those experiences, that first exposure to the raw energy of a newsroom, well, for me, it was intoxicating. It felt like anything was possible, like truth and justice were there to be uncovered if you just worked hard enough. These days, the people on the other end of your questions might not stop at no. They might berate, insult, or attack you. It's not pleasant. I have been there a few times. But it does not change our responsibility to the audience or to the truth. As I like to say, I'm not an advocate for Republicans or for Democrats. I'm an advocate for the facts, even and especially when it isn't easy. My grandma Faye passed away a few years ago. She was 105 years old. She was the matriarch, the star of our family. Believe it or not, even at that age, she was proficient on social media. After a heated exchange that I had had in the briefing room, a viewer named Helen knocked me on Facebook. I was terrible, the worst, an embarrassment, you know the deal. I ignore most of that stuff, but for whatever reason, on that day, I scrolled down and there was just one reply from Faye Alexander, 3 words, drop dead, Helen. As a journalist, what we do matters. It informs a community or a country. It challenges a politician or a president, but it does not happen overnight. It doesn't always go as planned either. I've been brushed off and ignored and heard no more times than I can count. And Mom and Dad were right. That's just doing your job. Being a journalist does not mean being popular. That's true in most White Houses. It's a little bit truer in the current one. In our house, we've come up with a pretty decent way, I think, to handle it. During the 2016 campaign, I pressed then candidate Trump on his vulgarity on the trail. His opponents had recently raised the issue in an ad, and I asked how parents should discuss it with their children. Mr. Trump, he didn't appreciate my question. He shot back, "Aren't you perfect? Aren't you just a perfect young man? Give me a break." At the time, I posted that quote and I wrote, "I'm gonna need to get that crocheted on a pillow." 2 weeks later, a box arrived on our doorstep, an order from my wife, a big fluffy pillow with that quote on it. That wasn't the last one. In those moments when I have been called out, shouted down, or verbally smacked around, viewers always ask me, they say, "How do you just sit there and not respond?" My answer is simple. Those moments reflect on the other person, not on me. My job is the next question. Being a journalist does not mean being popular. It means never, ever giving up. So I am grateful to USC's Annenberg School for this honor and for amplifying all these leading voices who share a commitment to a free press. I'd like to thank my NBC News colleagues, some of whom are here, who make the trenches a little bit more bearable each day, even enjoyable, I dare acknowledge. What an incredible group of journalists who push and support each other, one another, during these uniquely challenging times. Most of all, I'm grateful to my family, Allison, Ava, and Emma, who make the greatest sacrifice for me to do what I love, which means missing too many mornings, I know, and too many nights at home. We live in Virginia, and I'll never forget driving over one of the bridges into Washington with the girls several years ago with the monuments and the Capitol Dome in the distance. Emma said, "Oh, look, that's where Daddy lives." I love you guys, and I'm proud that you're with me here today. Walter Cronkite famously ended his broadcast saying, "That's the way it is," and Americans agreed. Those 5 words conveyed certainty that was earned through clarity and through trust. Today, in this line of work, certainty is harder to come by than ever. That's why accountability matters more than ever. If he were here, I trust that Mr. Cronkite would urge all of us to keep asking, keep pushing, and never to let the powerful turn "that's the way it is" into "that's all you get." Thank you very much.
Good on Faye, by the way. Our next winner is The Daily Show's host and executive producer, Jon Stewart. This is the first time the Cronkite Award invited submissions in the category of comedic news and commentary. Jon Stewart insists that he's not a journalist, he's a comedian. Well, as you learn to say in improv class, yes, and. Judges called Stewart a master of his class who alchemizes research into satire. The genre he pioneered, they said, delivers real news, skewers real hypocrisy, lands real comedy, and mounts a fierce case for democracy and social justice. They also noted that his shows incubated talents, including Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, Samantha Bee, Trevor Noah, Jordan Klepper, and Larry Wilmore. The show's entry takes down DOGE, the self-styled Department of Government Efficiency, for eroding safeguards that protect democracy instead of actually cutting fat. It's funny, accurate, and brutal, a perfect setup for the show's closing minutes. Let's watch.
Capitalism is by definition exploitative. It's how it operates. That's fine. But then government's role should be to ease the negative effects on Americans of that exploitation, not subsidize that treachery with our money. I want DOGE to work. I want better efficiencies. I want to get rid of the alphabet agencies that don't do enough, make the Pentagon pass an audit. But we are doging in the wrong place if we want to really change the system. Companies like Walmart, McDonald's make billions of dollars in taxpayer-subsidized profits, yet many of their hardworking employees need taxpayer-subsidized public assistance. Airlines get billions in bailouts that they use in stock buybacks and bonuses. But if you're on food assistance, you're not allowed to buy hot food with it. Because apparently heated entrees are for winners. We are subsidizing the very system that makes workers' lives harder in the first place. All in the name of freedom and liberty. But the greatest restriction of freedom in this country isn't DEI and pronoun pressure. It's poverty and struggle. And the government's role, I'm not done, you bastards. The government's role should be to end the corruption that enables that exploitation. That's what the Democrats should be doing every day. Every day. Every day at 5 p.m. sharp, the Democrats should go live on Facebook and do the people's audit. Find the absurdities and the remedies in our exploitative system. Get someone like AOC or Jasmine Crockett or Chris Murphy or anybody that doesn't sound like they're complaining why there's no more frozen yogurt at the cafeteria in the villages.
For satire that shreds doublespeak and hypocrisy, for attracting new audiences not reached by legacy media, and for utzing his audience to get out there and make a difference, the 2025 Cronkite Award for Comedic News and Commentary goes to The Daily Show's Jon Stewart on Comedy Central. Jon couldn't be here today. He's opening in a new show on Broadway tonight. But he sent us this.
I've just been informed that The Daily Show has won a 2025 Walter Cronkite Award. And I just want to say, huh? What? I looked on the website, there's a Walter Cronkite Award honors excellence in political journalism that exemplifies the role of a free press in upholding constitutional principles and the rule of law. And I read that and I thought to myself, that's not us. That's not us at all. I mean, we're delighted. Don't get me wrong. But then I found out we're actually the first ever winner in the new category, comedic news and commentary. And it made a lot more sense. That made a lot more sense when I had a little bit of that nuance as far as that's concerned. And we're delighted to be receiving that and really thankful not to be in that other category, which, and by the way, when I went to the website, really appreciate you guys using a picture of me with an over the shoulder of a bird doing cocaine. I don't remember why we were making the bird cocaine joke, but I do know it was Cronkite Award worthy. Now, generally, we try to accept these things in person, but obviously in D.C., as you know, my passport no longer works there. But I'm delighted. The entire team is delighted to be receiving an award of this magnitude. And thank you all so much for bestowing it upon us. I hope it's edible.
Accepting the trophy on Jon Stewart's behalf is The Daily Show producer, Shauna Shepard.
Thank you. On behalf of Jon Stewart, executive producer Jen Flans, the entire Daily Show cast and crew, and our colleagues at Comedy Central and the new Paramount, we want to thank USC Annenberg Norman Lear Center and Annenberg Public Policy Center for this honor. As you just heard from Jon, we don't try to do what you do, but we couldn't do The Daily Show without what you do. Through satire, we try to show how to hold those in power accountable while calling out hypocrisy in ways that journalists sometimes can't. It would have been easy to understand if Jon didn't want to come back to the show, But given all that's happening in the world, sitting on the sidelines wasn't an option for him. When he returned, it was to join an incredible roster of co-hosts: Ronnie Chang, Jordan Klepper, Michael Costa, Desi Leidick, and Josh Johnson. Each brings a distinct, dynamic, and hilarious lens to the show and allows us to cover stories in more ways than at any time in the show's history. Individually, like John, they embody the best principles of a free press. Every day, John, Jen, and the ensemble challenge us to look at different stories, different sides to a story, ask what is missing about how those stories are being covered. Our debates with each other are as rigorous as any newsroom myself and other colleagues have worked in, although I'll admit, a lot more fun. John and Jen Flans have also made sure The Daily Show uses our platform to encourage civic participation among our audience, including driving voter registration, poll worker recruitment, and animal adoption. In a more recent initiative, Indecision, Take a Seat, encourages viewers to run for office, demystifying the process and turning political frustration into public service. That's all in addition to John's personal dedication to supporting veterans and first responders. So as we approach the 30th anniversary of The Daily Show next year, we will keep calling out hypocrisy wherever we see it. And on behalf of Jon Stewart, Jen Flans, and the entire TDS team, thank you again for this recognition, and thank you for the hard work you do. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Now, finally, a Cronkite Award for work that captured what may be a turning point in our times. A day when galvanized citizens realized they weren't alone and saw themselves as a national pro-democracy movement. The winner is Rachel Maddow for the Rachel Maddow Show's entry, Everyone, Everywhere, All at Once, which aired on MSNBC, now MS Now. The first 100 days of the second Trump term returned Rachel to the host's chair 5 nights a week. The show's April 7th broadcast was among the first to cover, at scale, the 1,400 hands-off protest demonstrations happening on that day in 50 states. Judges praised the program for showing how an overwhelming number of Americans pushed back against the administration, not with tweets or TikToks, but with their feet. The Maddow team's storytelling drew on what they called a dizzying variety of images, sources, and locations. It conveyed the joyful boisterousness of peaceful civic action in a season when citizen engagement was most in need of visibility. Let's take a look.
These are some of the more than 1,400 protests that took place this weekend, protesting the actions of the Trump administration. I mean, this is me showing you 20 of them all at once. I could show you 20 at once for this entire hour, and we still wouldn't get through all of them. If you follow me on Blue Sky, I posted footage from hundreds of different protests that all took place this weekend on Saturday. But just looking at this 20, let me tell you what you're looking at here. Starting at the top, going left to right, and then top to bottom, upper left-hand corner, that's Atlanta, Georgia. Police estimated at least 20,000 people turned out in Atlanta, Georgia. Los Angeles, where the LA Times said the number was easily in the tens of thousands. The crowd may have reached 100,000 in Los Angeles alone. Another huge one in Seattle. Minimum estimates there, maybe 14,000 people. But just keep going. Huntsville, Alabama, Portland, Oregon, Davenport, Iowa, Charlotte, North Carolina, Green Bay, Wisconsin, Lansing, Michigan, Palm Beach, Florida, Phoenix, Arizona had a huge one. Providence, Rhode Island, Salt Lake City, Utah was huge. Austin, Texas, Buffalo, New York, Columbia, South Carolina, Indianapolis, Indiana was massive. Sacramento, California, another huge one. Detroit, Michigan, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I mean, that's 20 of, again, more than 1,400. I can tell you one of the consequences of these people turning out in so many places this weekend and in such great numbers, one of the direct consequences we absolutely can measure is that everybody in all of these places knows that if they themselves are upset or worried or mad or scared about what this administration is doing, they know they are not alone. We, the whole country, know that the people are not just taking things lying down. The people are now proving that they will show up, and they will do it everywhere. And likely, frequently.
For helping viewers see how individual acts of conscience can become a collective defense of democracy, and for turning disparate acts of dissent into a coherent story of democratic self-recognition, 2025 Cronkite Award goes to Rachel Maddow for The Maddow Show's Everyone Everywhere All at Once.
I know we're at the end and everybody has to pee. And if you're like me, you have a bad back and you're starting to do your exercises subtly in your seat, so I will go quickly. Thank you. Thank you very much for this. I want to acknowledge Aisha Williams and Holly Klopchen and Johanna Izzo, who are video producers and producers on this show, and I want to single them out specifically because they developed something new, a very labor-intensive system to try to do footage like this, not just on that day, but throughout this whole year that we've been on the air, for every day of the first 100 days and every Monday since. It involves not just looking at user-generated content and social media content and chasing those things down and verifying them and figuring out whether we can corroborate that information that we can find online relatively easily. It also means systematically scanning local news coverage from both newspapers and local TV stations, and then contacting those news organizations and asking if they've got anything good that they didn't publish. If there was a recorded live stream, if there's anything on the cutting room floor that we might be able to use, that we might be able to amplify, and we promise to credit you. It's a really, really, really labor-intensive job, and I feel incredibly guilty about you guys having transformed your jobs to be able to do this, because I fear that you have now learned a very special skill that you will never use again. But there's no way that we could do national media coverage of the remarkably decentralized protests against the Trump administration without our partners in local news, without some of the geniuses in this room today, but without our partners in local news everywhere. We depend on them. There are lots of systems in place to cover the powerful. The White House press corps, such as it is, DC bureaus, Capitol correspondents. In national news, when we cover people who aren't technically in power, it is often as, human interest or maybe crime, or powerfully, often as people who are affected by the decisions of the people who are in power. But, if we are serious about doing this work in a democracy and for a democracy, that categorization is backwards. Because in a democracy, the controlling force, the real power, ultimately is with the people. And when the people are expressing themselves politically, which means peacefully, they are telling power what it can do and what it cannot do. Imagine a faraway country with its democracy at risk. It's under pressure from a leader having his friends buy up and domesticate previously independent media, doing his best to intimidate or shut down the rest. He has the intent to rule by force, to consolidate all power in himself and rule indefinitely without being constrained by election results. In this faraway hypothetical country, if our foreign correspondents
were to assess whether that country would make it, whether they would weather this storm, they would not try to discern that by ever closer and more minute scrutiny of the words or even the actions of the despot. They would file their dispatches and their reporting and their analysis on the reaction of the people to what the despot is trying to do. They would file their dispatches and their reporting and their analysis based on what is evident in the resilience of the people and the quality of their response and the cleverness of their response and the number of inflatable frog costumes therein. The story of our age, I really believe, the story of our democracy right now is not a Washington story. And it is not easy to cover. But right now, it is the most important story in the world. So I want to say thank you to my colleagues here who have learned a whole new way to do our jobs in order to cover this story. I want to encourage all of you to look to the response of the people and not just the way they are victimized and affected by those in power. Because it is the response of the people that will decide whether or not we're here next year doing awards like this again. So, as I say to all my colleagues whenever I brave the big city, stay on the air, stay big, no state TV. Thank you for being here. Thank you for this award.
Sure. Well, to quote Peter quoting Walter, and that's the way it is. Cronkite reminded us that a free, unintimidated, and unregulated press is democracy's early warning system. Today, you have shown us why and how. Thank you for the work you do, the courage you bring, the self-government you safeguard, and the country you help keep free. We're grateful for you, and we need you. Thank you for being here.